Hello, grounded Taurus. Something is quietly shifting around you on August 16, 2026, and it may begin less like a sudden breakthrough and more like a realization you have been slowly approaching for some time. You've spent a great deal of energy building a life that feels dependable, protecting what matters, and creating a sense of stability you can actually stand on. But now you may be asking yourself a more important question. Is everything you are holding on to still giving you the peace and security you hoped it would? This is a moment for you to look carefully at the difference between stability and familiarity. Sometimes what feels safe is simply what you have known for a long time, and changing it can feel almost like questioning all the effort that brought you here. Yet you do not have to tear down what you have built just to make room for something new. You may simply need to recognize which parts of your life are still strong and which ones have become too heavy to carry. As you move through this shift, let patience work alongside courage, because growth does not always arrive by asking you to move faster. You may notice that your priorities are becoming clearer, particularly around the people, responsibilities, and commitments that have been occupying your attention. Instead of trying to keep everything steady at once, give yourself permission to decide what actually deserves your energy. There is a difference between being dependable and constantly making yourself responsible for everyone else's comfort. The more honesty you recognize that difference, the easier it becomes to create a life that feels peaceful from the inside rather than merely organized on the surface. Your relationships may bring some of these questions into sharper focus. You tend to value loyalty and consistency, and when you care deeply about someone, you may stay invested long after you have begun wondering whether the relationship is still meeting you with the same care. If a conversation becomes difficult, try not to measure the relationship only by whether conflict appears. Pay attention to what the conflict reveals about trust, reciprocity, and the needs neither of you has been saying clearly. Sometimes an honest conversation does not threaten stability at all. It shows you where a stronger foundation can finally be built. You may also recognize a familiar pattern in yourself, wanting to help someone you love, seeing what might make their situation better, and feeling frustrated when they refuse to take the advice you know could help them. Your compassion is valuable, but another person's choices cannot become your emotional responsibility. You can offer wisdom without carrying someone else's consequences, and you can care deeply without standing in the doorway of a life that they must learn to navigate for themselves. That realization may feel uncomfortable at first, but it can return a surprising amount of energy back to you. At the same time, this is a good moment to listen to people whose experience has taught them something you have not yet learned firsthand. Advice does not mean surrendering your judgment. Sometimes another perspective simply helps you see a familiar situation from a wider angle. Let yourself receive support instead of always being the person who provides it. Your emotional health becomes steadier when you stop measuring your worth by how much you can endure, fix, maintain, or carry for everyone around you. There is also an important practical layer unfolding around your resources. Money may be asking you to think beyond immediate comfort and toward the kind of security you genuinely want to create. Rather than viewing finances only through the lens of saving, spending, or accumulating, consider what your resources are meant to give you: freedom, peace of mind, choices, time, or the ability to build something meaningful. The strongest financial decisions now are likely to come from clarity rather than fear, especially when you take a moment to ask whether your habits are supporting the life you say you value. Your professional life may bring a similar realization. You could find yourself reconsidering whether your current work is rewarding you in the ways that actually matter, not simply whether you are receiving praise or taking on more responsibility. Compensation matters, but so do respect, stability, autonomy, meaningful growth, and the feeling that your effort is contributing to something you can believe in. A new project, collaboration, responsibility, or change in direction may become more interesting when you stop asking only, "Will this look successful?" and begin asking, "Does this belong in the life I'm trying to build?" There is a quiet form of opportunity here, but it does not need to arrive with fireworks. Sometimes the most important change begins with a small adjustment in what you are willing to accept, what you are willing to ask for, or where you are willing to place your attention. A room feels different when you finally open a window that has been closed for too long. Nothing about the structure has been destroyed, yet suddenly there is movement, air, and another way of experiencing the same space. That is the kind of change worth noticing now. Give yourself moments away from outside noise so you can hear what your own values are telling you. Nature can be especially useful as a reminder that growth rarely happens all at once. Roots deepen quietly, branches change direction, and a plant sometimes needs to lose a few old leaves before it can continue developing. You may be in a similar process, learning that releasing something does not automatically mean you failed to preserve it. Sometimes pruning is simply an act of respect for what you still want to grow. This is also where your sense of self-worth begins to shift. You do not need to prove your value by keeping every promise, maintaining every relationship, or making every part of your life look stable from the outside. Your worth is not measured by how much you can hold without breaking. It is reflected in your ability to recognize what sustains you, make thoughtful choices when circumstances change, and remain loyal to the values that still feel true even when the shape of your life begins to evolve. As this perspective settles in, you may feel a subtle return of confidence. Not the loud kind that needs everyone to notice, but the quieter confidence that comes from knowing what you will and will not compromise. You may begin to see that some recent pressure has been teaching you something valuable about your boundaries, your priorities, and the difference between patience and postponement. You have already invested so much in building your life. Now the question is not how to hold on to everything, but how to make sure what you continue building is actually worth your effort. That may bring a sense of renewal into areas that have felt stagnant. A reorganization at home, a clearer agreement, a healthier financial habit, or a more honest conversation can create more breathing room than you expect. You do not have to solve every difficulty at once for life to begin feeling lighter. Sometimes relief arrives when one piece is finally put back where it belongs, and that small shift gives you enough space to notice the other possibilities waiting quietly nearby. Emotionally, however, remain gentle with yourself. You may be more sensitive than usual to questions of trust, belonging, security, and whether the people around you truly value what you bring, rather than rushing to make a permanent decision from a temporary feeling. Give yourself enough quiet to understand what is actually happening beneath the surface. Ask yourself whether you are staying because something still feels alive and mutual, or because leaving would force you to admit that the version of the relationship you once believed in has changed. The same honesty applies to every area of your life. You are not being asked to abandon everything familiar, and you are certainly not being asked to reject the stability you have worked so hard to create. You are being invited to become more selective about what receives your loyalty, your time, your money, your care, and your emotional presence. The strongest foundation is not the one that never changes. It is the one that can be examined, repaired, and strengthened without losing the values it was built to protect. So as you move through August 16, 2026, allow yourself to pause before automatically saying yes, before carrying another responsibility, before defending something simply because you have defended it for a long time. Notice what feels solid when you are quiet, and notice what feels heavy even when you try to convince yourself that everything is fine. Somewhere between those two sensations is a clearer understanding of what belongs in your next chapter, and that understanding may begin changing the way you choose, love, work, and care for yourself from here. You are beginning to see people and circumstances with a steadier kind of clarity, Taurus, as though a layer of fog has finally lifted from the landscape you have been walking through. What once seemed confusing may now reveal itself more plainly, and with that clarity comes a deeper awareness of what deserves your trust and what has been quietly draining it. There is something powerful about realizing that you do not have to hold everything together simply because you have held it together for so long. The star speaks to the quiet restoration that has been taking place within you, especially through the personal work you have done when nobody else could see it. Your confidence is becoming less dependent on outside approval and more connected to the knowledge that you can rely on yourself. Rather than chasing every possibility, you are learning to recognize which possibilities actually fit the life you are trying to build, and that distinction can change the way you move through both your personal and professional world. The Six of Wands then brings attention to recognition after persistence, particularly around work or financial pressures that may have tested your patience. You may find yourself receiving appreciation, greater responsibility, or an opportunity to demonstrate what you are capable of. But the deeper message is not simply about being noticed. It is about allowing yourself to acknowledge your own progress instead of immediately moving the goalpost and deciding that what you have accomplished is still not enough. The Seven of Wands asks you to protect that progress with discernment. You do not need to fight every person who challenges you, but you do need to recognize when someone is asking for access to your time, energy, or plans without offering the same level of respect in return. Your strength here comes from knowing what is worth defending and what is better left outside the gate, whether the situation involves love, work, friendship, or another part of your life. The Ace of Coins brings this message down to earth. An idea, effort, project, or professional opening can become something tangible when you give it the patience and consistency it needs to develop. And this is where your natural endurance becomes an advantage. Instead of looking for a dramatic breakthrough, pay attention to the opportunity that offers real substance, something you can nurture, strengthen, and eventually depend on. Your health also deserves a more grounded kind of attention. When pressure builds quietly for too long, the body can carry tension that the mind has learned to overlook. So give yourself permission to take your well-being seriously, without assuming that every unusual sensation means something is wrong. If you are experiencing persistent anxiety, a racing heartbeat, unusual stress, or any physical concern, speaking with a qualified medical professional can give you clarity rather than leaving you alone with fearful possibilities. The same principle applies to any discomfort you may have been postponing. You do not need to create a problem where there isn't one. But if something genuinely concerns you, addressing it responsibly can prevent unnecessary worry from becoming another weight you carry. Taking care of yourself is not an interruption to everything else you are building. It is part of the foundation that allows you to keep building with greater steadiness. In your professional life, there is a sense that an important adjustment is taking shape. Responsibilities may shift, a new project may change the way your abilities are viewed, or circumstances at work may encourage you to reconsider what kind of environment actually supports your long-term growth. Instead of measuring your worth only by whether someone else praises you, begin paying attention to the substance of what you contribute, the stability you create, the skills you have developed, and the respect you know you deserve. Competition may still be present because other people are also trying to move forward, but you do not need to become someone else in order to keep your place. Your advantage comes through consistency, patience, and the ability to stay committed when the excitement around you begins to fade. Even small acknowledgements can matter, especially when they reflect effort that has been building quietly for a long time, and those moments can remind you that progress does not always arrive with applause. If you are searching for work, this period carries an equally important lesson about value. Financial improvement matters, of course, but a position that pays more is not automatically the right choice if it leaves you depleted, disconnected, or unable to build toward the future you actually want. Look for work that gives your efforts somewhere meaningful to go, where your abilities can grow and where the stability you gain supports the kind of life you genuinely value. Financially, the emphasis is on turning uncertainty into something more manageable through practical choices. Rather than treating abundance as something that simply appears, consider what financial security actually means to you and what kind of life you are trying to make possible through the resources you have. Steady work, a side project, careful planning, or a thoughtful opportunity can all become meaningful pieces of that foundation when you approach them without rushing. Stay active in your decisions, but do not confuse movement with progress. A small, deliberate choice can sometimes create more lasting momentum than a dramatic risk made out of frustration or impatience. Be thoughtful about who you share your plans with, protect what is still developing, and give yourself enough quiet space to recognize the difference between an opportunity that genuinely supports your values and one that simply looks attractive from a distance. Your intuition becomes most useful when it works alongside discernment. You do not have to say yes to everything that opens before you, and you do not have to reject change simply because the familiar feels safer. There is a middle ground here, Taurus, where you can honor everything you have worked so hard to build, while still allowing your life to grow in a direction that feels more honest, more sustainable, and more aligned with the person you are becoming. The more you trust the choices you are making, Taurus, the more you may begin to notice that support can appear in places you are not expecting it. Abundance here is not only about receiving more, it is also about recognizing that you already have the patience, judgment, and resilience to create something lasting from what is available to you. You are learning to move from scarcity into a quieter sense of enough, where you no longer have to cling to everything simply because you're afraid of losing it. And when it comes to love, something inside you may be asking to be acknowledged rather than postponed. You can spend so much energy maintaining responsibilities, protecting the people you care about, and keeping everyday life steady that your own emotional needs can become easy to place somewhere down the list. But your heart cannot remain behind that closed door forever, and emotional honesty may become just as important to your sense of security as financial or practical stability. If you are in a relationship, you may need to become more willing to say what has been sitting quietly beneath the surface. You do not have to create drama or force a difficult conversation, but you also cannot expect silence to repair something that needs attention. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is speak plainly, listen without preparing your defense, and allow both people to discover what is still alive between them and what needs to change. For you, Taurus, this could be especially meaningful because loyalty runs deep. Once you have invested your time, affection, and trust in someone, walking away from an old pattern can feel almost like admitting that all the effort you gave was wasted. But that is not necessarily what change means. Sometimes you honor what you built by being honest about what it has become, and you protect your own dignity by recognizing when mutual care has stopped being mutual. If you are single, there can be room for new connection without requiring you to rush toward it. You may encounter someone through ordinary social moments, shared circles, work, or circumstances that initially seem completely practical rather than romantic. What matters most is not whether the connection arrives dramatically, but whether you feel respected, emotionally safe, and free to be yourself around this person rather than feeling that you have to perform a version of yourself to keep their attention. Let yourself notice the difference between familiarity and genuine compatibility. A person can feel familiar simply because they activate an old emotional pattern, while someone healthier may initially feel quieter because they're not asking you to prove your worth. You do not have to force anything into existence, and you do not have to abandon your standards simply because you want companionship. Let connection develop naturally, while remaining attentive to whether the relationship has room for both people to give and receive. Family brings another layer to this same lesson. Your loved ones may recognize the ways you have been growing, even if they do not always express that recognition directly. And simple conversations or shared moments can remind you that belonging does not require you to carry everyone's emotional weight. There may still be old patterns around independence, responsibility, communication, or expectations that surface from time to time. But you have more freedom now to respond differently, instead of automatically stepping into the role you have always played. Healthy boundaries do not have to create emotional distance. In fact, they can make closeness more honest, because you are no longer saying yes out of obligation and then quietly resenting what you agreed to carry. You can love your family while allowing each person to make their own choices, and you can offer support without taking responsibility for outcomes that do not belong to you. Even ordinary moments together can become meaningful when there is less pressure to fix everything and more willingness to simply be present. Your own energy is also asking for better stewardship. You may feel more grounded and capable of handling important decisions, but that does not mean every request deserves your attention. Taurus energy becomes especially powerful when it is directed toward what has real value. So notice where your effort is producing something meaningful and where you are repeatedly spending yourself on situations that give very little back. The strongest current around your professional and financial life is one of structure. Rather than improvising your way through every problem, this is an opportunity to strengthen the foundations underneath what you are building. Organize what has become scattered and make decisions that will continue to serve you beyond the immediate moment. Stability does not mean refusing to change. It means creating enough structure that change does not have to throw your entire life off balance. The danger is allowing patience to become postponement. There is a difference between giving something the time it needs to develop and waiting indefinitely because making a decision feels uncomfortable. If there is a conversation you know you need to have, a boundary you need to establish, or a practical choice you have been avoiding, meeting it directly may bring more relief than continuing to carry it quietly. Your voice matters here, even if you are not naturally interested in explaining every thought you have. You do not need to become louder or more forceful than you are. You simply need to be clear about what you are asking for and why it matters to you. Whether you are negotiating at work, requesting support, discussing expectations in a relationship, or making an important personal decision, calm honesty can accomplish more than passive waiting ever will. And be careful with the habit of telling yourself that you will deal with something later when you already know it needs your attention. Delayed decisions have a way of taking up emotional space even when you are pretending not to think about them. Choosing with intention does not guarantee that every outcome would be comfortable, but it can return a sense of agency that has been missing while you were standing still. For students, this same principle applies to the direction of your learning. Instead of studying only because you feel you are supposed to, take a closer look at the subjects, skills, or areas of knowledge that genuinely hold your attention and seem connected to the future you want to create. Your natural patience can become a real advantage here because meaningful mastery often comes from staying with something long enough to understand it rather than rushing simply to reach the next milestone. Do not underestimate the value of asking questions, exploring unfamiliar material, and going deeper when something truly interests you. Progress may not always be dramatic, but each layer of understanding becomes part of the foundation you carry forward. If you have experienced setbacks before, they do not have to define your ability now. What matters is how deliberately you return to the work and what you choose to learn from the process. And when it comes to compatibility, the most meaningful connections for you now may be the ones that support your growth without asking you to become someone you are not. With Virgo, there can be a practical kind of understanding that feels reassuring because neither of you needs to create unnecessary drama to prove that something matters. Their attention to detail may help you notice what could be improved, while your patience can remind them that not everything needs to be perfected before it can be appreciated. Together, you may find that small, consistent choices can create more lasting progress than constantly searching for a completely different direction. With Cancer, the connection can offer a softer kind of support, especially around emotional security and trust. Cancer may encourage you to acknowledge feelings that you sometimes prefer to process privately, while your steady presence can give them a sense that they do not have to carry their emotions alone. This dynamic can remind you that stability is not only about having everything under control. Sometimes it is also about knowing that you have a safe place to be honest when life becomes uncertain. When both of you feel respected and emotionally secure, the connection can create room for closeness without either person having to give up their own boundaries. And then there is Scorpio, where the energy becomes deeper and more transformative. Scorpio may challenge you to examine what you are holding on to simply because it has become familiar, especially when a situation has outgrown the version of you who originally chose it. Their intensity can encourage you to look beneath the surface, rather than automatically protecting what feels safe, while your grounded nature can help give their emotional depth a practical foundation. This connection may teach you that change does not always mean losing what matters. Sometimes it means removing what no longer fits so that something more honest has room to develop. You may have been carrying certain responsibilities so independently that you forgot how much strength there can be in allowing another person to stand beside you. Genuine support does not require you to surrender your decisions, and asking for help does not make you less capable or less self-reliant. Sometimes the most grounding realization is that you can remain firmly rooted in who you are while still allowing yourself to be heard, cared for, challenged, or understood. The right connection will not pull you away from yourself. It may simply help you see yourself with greater clarity. As you take these reflections with you, remember that astrology is best used as a way of exploring patterns and possibilities, rather than as a fixed script for your relationships. The symbols may give you language for something you have already been sensing, but your circumstances, judgment, and lived experience remain more important than any prediction. Keep what helps you understand your needs more honestly and recognize which connections support your growth, while allowing anything that does not fit your reality to remain simply an interesting perspective. And if this message gave you something meaningful to reflect on, you can support the channel with a like. That small gesture helps these readings reach people who may also be looking for a quiet moment of perspective. And if you want to remain part of this community, you can subscribe and turn on notifications for future readings. Your support allows this space to continue growing around conversations that encourage reflection without asking you to accept every message as absolute. Thank you for spending this time here and for bringing your own experience into this space. Whether you share your thoughts openly, return for another reading, or simply listen quietly, your presence contributes to the warmth of this community. Take whatever helps you move forward with greater self-respect. Stay close to the values that genuinely matter to you. And remember that being rooted does not mean refusing to change. It means knowing what is worth carrying with you as the next part of your path begins to take shape.